What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the Wise Tech NFL DFS First Look. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And I'm joined once again by one of the true OGs of the Wise Tech Nation, Mr. Patio Joe, who you can find on Twitter at Patio Joe Ref. Joey, my man, what's happening?
Not much, man. Season's greetings. It is, we're like 3 days before Christmas. And it's week 16. For some of us, it's championship week in our fantasy football leagues. And for some of us, it's just DFS and Christmas.
Yeah, I'm
excited to talk both.
I'd be on the DFS Christmas portion. but shout out to you, Joe. Championship week. Joey, I know baseball was a weird season. We had a reduced season, and you took some time off. Normally, you cover some baseball at the Wise Tech Nation, and you spent all that time, as you mentioned, focusing on fantasy football and the upcoming seasons and your season-long approaches, and it's carried over into your DFS play, Joe. You've had a pretty solid year so far. Knock on wood, it's not over. But just saying, Joe.
No.
Shout out to Joey.
No, the cash game article is 9-6 on the season, so that's good. Like last year, I think I was like 11-6 or 11-7 or something like that. So I did really well. So about the same as last year. You know, there was some obviously really good weeks. Started out great, but then there was a little bit of a lull in the middle of the season. But yeah, it's been fun. I like playing cash games, and obviously like the GPP life is also fun too.
Oh yeah, man. GPP life is a lot of fun. It wasn't so much fun for me this past weekend, but it is fun in general. But it was fun for a couple people who won our listener league. That's right. We're going to pull up DraftKings listener league. This is the last listener league of the season too. So shout out to those of you taking advantage. And that is Permastunt, who is the winner. Jalen Hurts, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, which is some late news we got. Emmanuel Sanders. Oh, he had Traquan Smith and Emmanuel Sanders. Very, very Saints heavy. But it was really Jalen Hurts, obviously, and Pollard, who gave him a tremendous boost. Pollard only 23.5% in a listener league. And then, of course, he worked in Lynn Bowden. We had some injury news from Miami that he reacted to. Travis Kelce was able to afford because of all the value receivers. And then Kamara, who was 100% owned in a listener league. Alvin Kamara. I see you in fifth, Joe. I see you in fifth, Joey Joe. I see it with the Kyler Murray. Love it. Love it. I had Kyler Murray, but not enough. Not enough. DeAndre Hopkins, Joe. He ended up being one of my favorite plays on the slate by the end of it. By the time I was done with it, he was a good one. So shout out to Permastunt. Let's go over to FanDuel real quick. I forgot to put my lineup in on the FanDuel one because I am a giant donkey, but that's okay because we are going to talk about our winner here anyway, who is Mr. Sierra Man. Mr. Sierra Man. I could fucking figure this thing out for a second here. Where are we? Here we go. Okay, now we're talking. I think I figured out where we're at, Joe. Yes, Kyler Murray,
there you go.
Alvin Kamara, Pollard, Kiki Kuti, DeAndre Hopkins, Russell Gage, who had another strong performance, Travis Kelce, common theme, Cam Akers. He got screwed on Cam Akers, right? I mean, he got 15 carries in, but Cam Akers did ultimately end up getting hurt. And so maybe he could have gotten a little bit more, but
he had a touchdown called back too.
Yeah, that was a bummer. He did get 15 carries, and now he's out. But shout out to you, Mr. Sierra Man. Shout out to Permastunt, last listener league of the season. It was a fun little thing, man. Hopefully we do it again next year. Hopefully we get more buzz created and we get more people up in the contest and fill it out a little bit more, and can have a little more fun with that. But shout out to those of you who did do well, man. Jalen Hurts was kind of like a clear pivot that I just completely I was real stubborn. Like I had a lot of Breeze teams, and the slate set up perfectly for me to late swap to Jalen, right? Because I was really big on the chalk running backs like Fournette and Pollard. So once those guys came through at relatively high ownership, I should have looked to like spread myself out a little bit instead of like, hanging up on one game. And so that kind of bit me in the ass. Like, it was right in front of me, didn't do it. Just pivoting to the Arizona game in general, I think would have definitely been suffice. But now, we look at this week, and we'll get to that game. Jalen Hurts is priced up a little bit more. So A couple things to discuss on this slate. We have some injuries. We have some revenge narrative. I'm looking at you, Melvin Gordon. A few different things to delve into. So that being said, Joe, we're gonna go game by game as we always do. We're gonna start things off with the Indianapolis Colts, Pittsburgh Steelers. We have a 45 total. Steelers currently 2-point favorites. The Steelers have now lost. The Colts 2-point favorites. The Steelers have now lost, 3 games in a row after this fiasco? But they are at home. Joe, we're going to start with the Colts side. What do you see?
Yeah, the Colts side, I want no piece of Rivers. My thought is that if there's ever any fight in the Pittsburgh defense, it's this weekend against the statue and Rivers. I mean, they've made a career out of beating him up when he's with the Chargers. I feel like it's a get right spot for the passing, the defense of the Steelers. But you got to look at Jonathan Taylor. If there's this one, Colt that stands out, he's 7,500. He's still very affordable on FanDuel. We saw what Gio Bernard did with 25 carries this week. I mean, there's something up with this team. Obviously, Watt got injured too, so that didn't help. But to me, it's Jonathan Taylor. The passing game showed us last week that you just don't really know who's going to be the flavor of the week with Rivers. We thought it was going to be T.Y. Hilton. He usually smashes against the Texans, but it turned out to be Pascal week. So thus, I don't want to deal with anything else in the passing game. To me, it's Jonathan Taylor. Maybe if you tend the narrative that the Steelers' offense is crap, then you can go with the Colts defense, which is a very good defense at a lower price, finally at 4,300.
The old Colts defense. Not me. Just kidding. But, I'm with you. Running game could be interesting. Really not a whole ton in this game that I'm interested in. Hilton's always been a guy we like to play at home. Was not the case last week. He's also a guy that always beats up. Although we did note last week, I remember saying on both the shows that T.Y. Hilton's splits against Houston have been reversed. So his numbers are almost doubled when he plays Houston in Houston opposed to at home, which is just very weird because his overall career, his home splits are much stronger. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, I'm not too interested. I mean, we only have 10 games, so it's a smaller pool, but it's still big enough to where I think I could find better plays than these guys against the Steelers. Maybe I'll be eating my words by the end of the week. But I'm with you. Maybe working some running back, especially if I end up doing some MME this week. But there's not a whole ton I'm trying to force in here. What about the Steelers, man? They fucking need a win just to show that they don't suck. But they kind of look like maybe they suck. I don't think they do. I really don't think they do, Joe. I don't think they suck. I think they're just in a little bit of a rut. But maybe they suck. What do you think? You think they suck?
Well, this is a must-win game for them because you don't want to have to go to Cleveland, believe it or not, Week 17 for the division. If Cleveland wins this week against your Jets, which, side note, how do you feel about having the worst win in the history of sports?
I was very defeated this weekend. Very defeated. One, because I did not do well in DFS, and the cherry on top, the real kick in the nuts, was the Jets somehow winning that game. But I've thought about it long and hard, Joe. I can't be mad at the Jets, right? These are players that are trying to show that they're NFL athletes, trying to not be embarrassed. Who I'm really pissed at is the Rams. Like, what? That is just pathetic. One of the teams that I think a lot of people have going to the Super Bowl from the fucking NFC, and you couldn't beat the Jets of all teams. And I believe they were home. Mind-boggling stuff, man. Sam Darnold going back to LA doing dirts. He was happy to be home, I guess. I don't know. I have no words, man.
Well, we'll get to that Rams-Seattle game, but it seems to me obviously that they were looking ahead.
Oh, without a doubt.
The Seahawks next week.
Without a doubt. It's almost like they didn't even game plan. They were like, we'll just wing it.
Yeah.
Let's just practice for Seattle. We'll wing it.
Seattle went out there and dropped 30 on them. Why not? We're not good. We're gonna be able to do it. We're at home too. So, but back to the Steelers. If James Conner is out again, you have to look at Benny Snell at 5,400. He had a good game last week. It felt like he was given the reins of the running game. He went at 84 yards, got a touchdown, caught a couple passes. But to me, right now, like Conte, 6,700 on FanDuel. I mean, 2 weeks ago when he got benched for a half, still wound up leading the team in targets that game. Okay, it don't matter. Like, this guy is their best weapon on offense. He is what they want to be. And at 6,700, you're getting a cheap price for a guy that's going to get you 10 to 12 targets, like at minimum, I think. Like, it's this game is going to be, it's a must-win game. It's going to be up and down. I can't imagine him, not performing. I'm not worried about the drops either. Like, he made some great catches last week. What people don't realize is it was blown up because it was Sunday Night Football. When that stuff happens all the time in games, guy drops a couple passes, you're down for a couple series. That happens. The guy's got a bad reputation for dropping passes. He's their best receiver. I wouldn't mind also going with Juju too. He's been embarrassed lately, like people just ripping him, and the kids just like, I don't think he does it any malice or trying to like show him up. That's just who he is. He's just having fun. And that's just kind of like today's athlete. Claypool is just an absolute dart throw. You know that he has the high ceiling, but we're not going to see it. And Ebron might be hurt. The Steelers defense, I think also too, you could take a look at. Like I'm saying, Rivers is a statue, and I think that they can get to him and get some snacks. And we know that Rivers can throw some picks too. So this game is interesting to me. I like this game.
I don't love the game overall because of the Colts side. I do like the Steelers side. Ben Roethlisberger, known for his home and road splits, right? Last game, I'm not making excuses for him, but he was on the road. And like you gotta like Deontay. And if you think Ben Roethlisberger, even if you don't like him, which I don't necessarily, but even if you think he's gonna play better at home, you gotta think that's gonna be better for his receivers. And like you mentioned, Deontay just gets the ball fed to him constantly. So I'm with you on Deontay. It's just really hard to click Claypool or Schuster, unless you're doing 150 teams or something like that. It's hard to click those guys over Deontay because of the amount of consistent targets he's getting. Obviously, there's the injury thing. He did get hurt in the last game. He came back, but he did technically get hurt. And we know, we've seen Claypool just kind of go nuts in those situations. But it's Deontay is really the only thing I see right out the gate that I'm like, I can get some of that. You know what I mean? I can get some of that.
Or Snell. I mean, if Connor's out, Snell, I think you got to look.
If Connor's out, I can consider it. I can give it consideration. Panthers, Washington, 44.5 total. Washington currently 2.5-point favorites at home. Christian McCaffrey expected to be back, I believe, as of now, though it is early. Joey, talk to me about Carolina.
Yeah, they actually moved this game to the 1 o'clock slate too, or the 4 o'clock Eastern time. This game, it's hard to really put a finger on it because you don't know who's going to be starting at quarterback for the Washington football team. Dwayne Haskins was a dodo. First of all, I didn't even know that there was strip clubs open, let alone strip clubs without masks, let alone strip clubs without masks, and there's lap dances. Like, wow. First of all, what, that just is crazy to me. And in California, where we can barely go outside right now. So you see this guy in a club without a mask on with a stripper in a pandemic. I mean, how dumb are you? What?
And
the fact that he's still employed is amazing.
And at a time where he finally, he got benched. He's not in the good graces of this organization or coach. At a time where he finally gets an opportunity to play because the dude's hurt, and instead of going out there and showing, a different side, he just continues to show them that they are correct in their assessment of him. It's just,
it's like what goes through the athlete's mind is like, okay, yeah, we're gonna go to the club tonight. What club? The strip club. Okay, you gonna bring masks? Nah,
bro.
Okay, cool.
I'll tell you exactly.
Nobody's gonna notice me there.
I'll tell you exactly what goes on in his mind. Boobs. Boobs. That's what goes on in his mind at that moment.
I mean, but think about it though. Hey, you got enough money, you're an NFL quarterback. Order it. Have it come to your house.
Delivery, yes. Uber. Uber strips. Yes, I've heard of it.
Exactly. I mean, come on. It's the oldest profession in the world. Are you telling me you couldn't get a girl to come over to his house? Wow. I mean, it's crazy. But back to this game is in Washington, right?
Yes.
Okay. So back to the Carolina side. this is a good Washington defense. I don't know if I really want to go there. Like McCaffrey's 10,000. I'm just not doing it. It's a Ron Rivera like revenge game against his own team. Like I'm not looking at anything in Carolina this week. I mean, you really got to start when you're looking at these slates now. We're getting close to the fact where you really have to like dig into seeing like what's left to play for. Is there any incentive for the player, like milestone or something? Salary incentive, or can they make the playoffs? This is a game where Washington's in control, so you kind of like that side, but Carolina's got nothing to play for. So why would they push McCaffrey? And at 10K, you're really going to go there? Not there. You could sell me on if you wanted to go with Robbie Anderson or something like that. They're just not dependable anymore. And no Bridgewater, no nothing like that. I'm pretty much off the Carolina offense because they really got nothing going for them.
To me, it's C-Mac or not, right? I mean, it's expensive on DraftKings. It's a little bit more of a decision, right? Because PPR is such a big deal. You get bonuses for receiving, 100 receiving yards and 100 rushing yards, which he's capable of. But I have to agree, he missed most of the season. He came back, got hurt immediately. You said you weren't going to overwork him. You did, and then he got fucked up his shoulder. So what's the point at this point? Like, what's the point? You're playing a really good Washington team. However, on a slate without, as D. Millie will say, on a slate without any alphas, a non-alpha slate, we don't have all the ton of studs that we've always had. This is not as big of a slate as we've had. We do need to at least recognize him on DraftKings as a player who has one of the highest ceilings on the slate. But I think right now I would lean towards it. Just doesn't make sense for them to play him a ton. I do think Washington wins this game. And if it's no C-Mac, it's really nothing else I want here. So that'll be something that I'll be, stalking beat writers for to try to figure out and gauge, if I can, how much we think he may play. But if it's what I'm thinking, which is even, 50%, if it's like a split type situation, which I think if they're smart, they will, being as they're not playing for shit, then I would agree with you, Joe. I would think that we pass, but can't rule them out. One of the only alpha plays all day. What about the Washington side?
I mean, not really knowing who's going to be quarterback is kind of hard to tell. We saw Haskins just pepper Logan Thomas last week, so I don't mind that. But if somebody else is quarterback, I mean, if they could go to Tyler Heineke, I think that's the guy that they could go to if they were to dump Haskins and Alex Smith can't play. I heard Tyler Heineke would be the quarterback, and he's not even on FanDuel right now.
He doesn't exist over there.
That shows you, yeah. So that shows you how good he is. McKissick, that would probably be the only player right now that I'd really be considering that you think that might be safe just for a couple of dump offs on DK. But that's it. Let's go on to the next game. Oh, the Washington defense, I could see them like kind of carrying them this week.
Yeah, I like the Washington D as well. Yes, I do. I'm going to assume Alex Smith is starting because I know he really wanted to start last week, and I think he thought he would have. So say he's able to start this week. It'll raise my interest in McKissick for the target purposes, but that all depends on the status of Antonio Gibson. Not a whole ton I'm with here. If Gibson is back, if he is back, I don't mind Gibson. He settled into this role. His usages look good. They were involving him in the pass game the last time before he got hurt. So against Carolina, a team that struggled against the run for most of the season, pretty much all season. I think they're 11th in fantasy points allowed to running backs. I don't mind Gibson if he's there. Gibson in the Washington defense, let's fucking go. How about that? I like that. Go. Let's fucking do it. Okay, here we go. Falcons, Chiefs, 54 total. Chiefs currently 10.5 point favorites at home. Talk to me about the Dirty Birds.
What I like about this game is that the Chiefs still have something to play for home field advantage. They're playing at the same time as the Steelers. So they're going to come out there with all they want. As for the Falcons side, it's really only Calvin Ridley, I think. Maybe Gage in like, kind of like a little spot here and there. But Calvin Ridley has just become the alpha receiver in Atlanta right now. Back-to-back over 20-point performances, especially without Julio there. Now, if Julio's back, I still think he gets 9 to 10 targets. He's just his ceiling. I think it becomes like, more of just a cash game play, but at 8,700, it's really tough. But that's about it. Hayden Hurst, I guess. Flyers on tight end. That's it.
Yeah, I think so this is a tricky one, right? I don't really have a ton of confidence in Matt Ryan on the road. I do think that Atlanta somehow finds a way to keep this game competitive enough. The running back situation has been very strange over there, right? Gurley seems to be getting phased out, right? We saw it in week 14. Ito Smith played like 25 snaps. Gurley played 19. And then most recently, week 15, Ito got 31. Gurley got 16. So something seems, like they're just looking more towards Ito Smith, who's 4K on DraftKings. Obviously a risk because Brian Hill is also getting work, so we are seeing a three-headed monster. But just for the sake of prices on DraftKings, I'll throw that out there. After that, it gets murky. If you're coming to this game, you're going to want Kelsey, you're going to want fucking Hill, and so Ridley over those guys, even though last week was the recipe, is a little discomforting, especially if Julio's in. I think if Julio's in, I may settle for him or Gage, like you said. But I think the easiest one to click is probably Hayden Hurst. Kansas City, as we know, has given up the 12th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. The only problem with that is I really like Kelsey on the other side as well. So this is a game I feel like I'm going to want exposure to for sure. I'm just not exactly sure where I'm going to get it from on the Atlanta side. I'm thinking Hurst because he could help me get access to Tyreek Hill and some of those other guys if I decide to come here. But if Julio Jones does play, he's tempting at the price. So I don't know. I'll have to come back to this one. What about the Chiefs side, Joe?
I mean, the Chiefs side, I think it's like Mahomes and, Tyreek Hill. This defense is 100%. You could toast them. We saw what Brady did against them. Kansas City is back home after 2 weeks being on the road, 2 tough games. They're coming back in to play the Falcons. Mahomes, Kelsey, Hill, stack them up. Boom, do it. That's what I like. Don't overthink this one. I think if Le'Veon Bell, I think that he kind of got dinged up too. Didn't he last week? Even though he had a lot of carries, I thought he got kind of hurt too. Did I hear that?
He did like somebody gave him a hit that he didn't like, and he was kind of like gimpy. I think he finished out the game and everything, but he had like a stinger or something that he was real pissed about it. His back or something.
Because if he's out, then I really like Darrell Williams.
I don't expect him to be out. I don't think he's even questionable or anything. I'll double check, so okay. I don't expect him to be out, but you never know.
But if Bell's there, they kind of mix things up for each other. So to me, it's just Kelsey, Hill, Mahomes. I would even maybe go with the KC defense too. I could see them pressuring Ryan into some sacks and stuff like that. But yeah, I like this game a lot.
Yeah,
I mean this
side for sure. I mean the Chiefs on DraftKings, it's going to be really fucking tough to do Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Kelsey together. Then again, we don't have those. If you're not playing McCaffrey, we don't have a ton of those super studs. So maybe you could find a way to do it this week. I kind of like the way I feel now is almost like, well, if I'm not doing a Mahomes stack, then I might as well play Bell because the Chiefs are going to score in some way. And if the issue is that the Chiefs don't get pushed because they beat the shit out of the Falcons, then you got to think that Bell's going to get fed enough to where he gives you something at a position that is relatively weak, right? Running back. Like to call it weak, I know is crazy to a degree, but we don't have those guys. We don't got no Derrick Henry. We don't got no Dalvin Cook. We don't have these guys. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, obviously this looks like a phenomenal spot for Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, both. Maybe you don't even go to both of them. Maybe you play a Sammy Watkins or something like that, or a Mecole Hardman. Either way, it does look like a really good spot for the Kansas City offense. The question is, what type of value are you working with to be able to afford to play these guys? That is the question. Next up, Browns, Jets, 46.5 total. Browns 10-point favorites on the road. Cleveland just beat up on the Giants while the Jets just upset the Rams. Talk to me about the Browns.
Yeah, the Browns, Baker Mayfield, I think, is firmly in play at 7,600. He's fairly safe. He's been the number 3 quarterback, fantasy quarterback, the last 3 weeks. He's facing the Jets defense where they're better against the run. Nick Chubb at 9K. I'm like the biggest Nick Chubb fan in the world, but I don't think he's a 9K running back just because they don't seem to give it to him enough to where like he'd have to score like 2 touchdowns and score and catch more balls. So I just think he's 9K because of like it's the slate, not because of what he's really been doing. It's kind of weird. Like he's too expensive on FanDuel for me. Like he'd have to score 2 touchdowns. And I guess the Jets, I mean, it could happen, but they always like to mix in Hunt. So, I mean, you need some Hunt every once in a while, you know what I mean? So, wide receivers, Jarvis Landry, I think is at 6,500. That's underpriced for his matchup and his usage lately. He's just been pretty safe, pretty standard for 9 to 10 targets. And he's gotten 3 touchdowns out of the last 4 games, so I don't mind that. All the other guys are kind of just throwing darts at Peoples-Jones and Higgins and stuff like that, but I don't mind it. Like Hooper, if you're doing a whole game stack, that's fine. I just don't see the Jets like kind of keeping up. The Cleveland D, I think, is also in play.
To be honest with you, I'll say this: last year the Browns and Jets played, and
early in the year.
Yeah. It was definitely early into the year. And the game was fairly competitive, and the Browns are a much better team on offense. However, I do think their defense is actually worse than it was at that time. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets hung around enough to allow Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry, and maybe like Austin Hooper to deliver value. One thing that's been pretty consistent with the Jets is running backs have not done all that well, despite the fact that the Jets lose by a lot. And it's because the Jets have a decent run personnel. It's really the secondary where they're in bad shape. Apparently, the Rams never got that memo because they continued to feed Cam Akers the rock 15 times. Although, admittedly, Jared Goff was off his game, and in general, they didn't look great. But this is a phenomenal spot for Baker, and I think that we saw the issue on the showdown slate. If you look at it on a main slate perspective, was the Giants didn't push him, but the Giants did move the ball. They just couldn't really finish in the end zone. But I do like Baker. I do like Jarvis Landry. I don't mind the Higgins and all that, but Landry, and then really Austin Hooper, because the Jets, especially lately, have really been terrible against tight ends. In fact, they're first in fantasy points allowed to opposing tight ends. Austin Hooper, 3,500, nice little third cheap piece of this little, stack situation here. But yeah, you got to like the Browns offense, number 1, because they're red hot. Number 2, because they're playing the Jets. Double whammy. What about the Jets side? What are you feeling here? Anything?
Crowder.
Yeah.
I could see Crowder like doing some dirties on that secondary.
I can't. Crowder's 4,500 on DraftKings, man.
Yeah, he's only 6K on FanDuel.
Yeah.
Pretty cheap for FanDuel, but 4,500 is really cheap.
Yeah.
So, but that's about it. That's the only person you really could look at.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I don't hate the Mims or Perriman, but Crowder, I mean, he's clearly Sam Darnold's security blanket. If the Jets do well, usually Crowder has Crowder at 4,500 seems like actually a pretty solid value play. You got a number 1 receiver talent, or at least usage, for a very, very low price. Holla at your boy, Scream Most.
What do you think about Chubb? Do you think my take on Chubb? Do you agree? Like just his price on what's his price on DK? I mean, he doesn't catch passes, so it's hard to.
He's 7-8 on DraftKings. Like I think he scores at least 1 touchdown because Nick Chubb does that, But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think 7-8 on this. I don't know if it's worth it. Like even at 7-8, like you said on FanDuel 9K, that's what you're paying for. It's a touchdown. Like on DraftKings, I don't know. I mean, I feel like with PPR, you could find better options elsewhere. I'm just not that into it either. I really don't like taking running backs against the Jets. I really don't. It's not my ting, if you will.
Yeah.
It's just not my ting. Bengals, Texans. Joe, we've got a 46 total. The Texans currently 9-point favorites at home. Cincinnati's red fucking hot, bro. Beat the Steelers, but now they play on the road. This is two bad defenses. Holla at your boy. What do you like on the Bengals side?
It's kind of hard to like pinpoint anything on the Bengals side that you could actually like. You know what I'm saying? Like anything consistently. I do know this: T. Higgins are one of 3 people that played 100% of the snaps on offense of anybody in the NFL last week.
Oh, well, Boyd did get hurt.
Yeah, Boyd did get hurt.
So they needed his ass bad.
Yeah, but he's 5,800, so I don't mind that. But it's such an inconsistent passing game that you can't really rely on it. I don't think so. It's a pass. Maybe Gio. I think he kind of saw a little revitalized. I just don't know, like, if you're chasing points, if you're playing Gio and such, because we saw what he did with the Steelers. Man, he had a lot of volume play and stuff like that. Got 2 touchdowns. You figure they're going to want to maybe try and do that again, and you know that you can run on Houston. So at 6K, I don't mind it. You're going to need, I think, one value running back somewhere on your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, Gio bounced back in a big way after getting benched the previous game for fumbling on the opening on his opening touch. 4,800 on DraftKings, really cheap. We don't really have a ton of alphas. It seems like a decent slate to maybe at least get 1 or 2 punts in at the position. I don't mind Gio. And the receiving core is too cheap. Tyler Boyd might be out. If Tyler Boyd is out, then A.J. Green and Higgins are going to be even more appealing. They're going to try to throw. I don't think Cincinnati's defense is all of a sudden good. I expect Houston to be able to move the ball. And Houston's defense is among the worst in the league. So if there's any team that these guys should be able to move the ball against, it should be Houston. However, I will admit, perception may be a little bit higher on the Bengals than it should be. They got up for a game against a division rival, and they were at home, and they were just pumped up to kind of get that win, and they did. We don't know if we're going to see that same fire playing a team like Houston. Bottom line is they're not good. But yeah, Boyd is 4,900. He's got a concussion. We'll see if he even plays. If he's out, you got to think Higgins is going to get a ton of targets, and maybe even it opens up some more value if we see whoever mans the slot for Boyd. But definitely something to keep an eye on. It seems like a good team in general to come get value from, considering the phenomenal matchup. What about the Houston side?
Yeah, the Houston side, obviously Deshaun Watson, I think, is a very safe play against the Cincinnati defense. They played a great game, but I'm not scared of this defense going on the road. He's 8,500. He's a little bit priced up, so I just don't know if you really want to go there, or whether Cincinnati's going to score enough points for Watson to make value and stuff like that. The guy that's interesting to me, and I haven't decided yet if we're chasing or not, but I feel like it's a trap, is David Johnson. He got 11 targets, 11 receptions for over 100 yards last week. Got 18. He only ran for 27 yards, though. And that was because Houston was behind, and they was getting a lot of, dump-off passes. And I just think that you're chasing if you go back to him this week, because I feel like they're going to be in control, and I don't know if they're going to be running the ball. I mean, he might make up for it a little bit in the running game, but I'm just not sure if, you're chasing or not. I think on DK, he really looked good, because he got those 11, he was over, almost 30 points. But on FanDuel, he was only 18, so even with all that, he's only got 18 points. Just don't know. And then receiving-wise, I think you can go back to, Cooks, Kuti. Kuti seems to be the one that's really producing consistently lately, but even his doesn't have like a high ceiling. So it's all just almost cash plays because they're not going to be going for anything huge.
And to be honest, I'm probably underrating the Bengals defense a little bit. Like if you look at what they've done recently, outside of like the last time they played the Steelers and got dollywopped, they got beat up by the Cowboys, motivated Andy Dalton, and a lot of the points they've given up had a lot to do with how the lack of production from their offense. That being said, it's like Deshaun Watson, I think if he's low owned, there's some interest there in tournaments. But when you look at these two teams, and I think the perception of these two teams is that they're not very good defensively, and you see a total that's fairly low, like, I don't know, just sets up some red flags. If David Johnson gets there this week, I agree with you, Joe. It's not going to be from the pass game. I don't think. I think it's going to be from actual rushing touchdowns, which implies that Houston does live up to what Vegas is saying, and they do have a comfortable lead. So I think this game in general is kind of interesting. I know the value was popping out to me on the Bengals side a little bit more so. I really think Houston's defense is worse than Cincinnati's. So I think I'm kind of into the value plays on the Bengals a little bit more than I seem to be into the Houston side. Maybe that's a mistake. We'll see come the Y stream once we map things out for. Obviously, this is our first look. But yeah, I thought I'd have more interest in this game, but looking at the prices, I'm just not all that into it. And I think whereas I did kind of think that T. Higgins, especially if Boyd is out, or AJ Green at 3,400 even, was like definitely a lot more interesting. So we'll see where that goes. Next up, we have the Giants and the Ravens. We've got a 45 total. The Ravens currently 10.5-point favorites. This is where the Ravens are supposed to, make their money back, right? They struggled beginning of the season. They have a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way. Talk to me first about the Giants, though.
It's one of those situations where you got if is Daniel Jones back or not. I'm going to assume that. I mean, he's not. So it's like we saw. What do you think?
I don't know. He clearly wants to play. He was trying to play last week, and then they did play him, and he sucked ass. And then we're like, no, fuck that, you're not playing. But now it's been a couple weeks. Maybe I have no fucking clue. I have no fucking clue.
And even if he does play, like, is it really that much of an upswing? Like, I just don't think you can, like, rely on anybody on this offense. Like,
I agree.
At all.
I agree. I think the one reason I would say maybe it matters is because on both sites, his receiving options, including Evan Ingram, are very cheap. So I think to me, even it's not the greatest matchup, but to me that's the only reason Jones matters. Because if it's Colt McCoy, I'm just not confident these guys can score touchdowns. But if it's Danny Jones, maybe we have a shot at a deep play to Slayton or something. That's kind of how I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
so that's it.
That's it. Yeah. Ravens, anything there?
I think if Bradbury's out again, the Giants, we saw Baker just tore up the secondary. We saw Chubb do okay, but so that kind of Dobbins. I think Lamar makes a good GPP pivot off of Mahomes or Deshaun. He's like right in the middle of them. So if he can pass like he has been, I like guys like Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown. Maybe in a deep GPP.
Hey, if this game were a movie, it would be he's just not that into you. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't really do it for me. The pricing is up. Lamar can just take off. You know what? Naked Lamar. I would do that. I don't even think it's worth it trying to play Marquise Brown. Andrews, obviously, I don't mind, but the Giants have been decent against Titans. This is a decent defense when Bradbury's there. They looked a lot more shitty without Bradbury, so that's kind of a big deal. But either way, I'd probably still be either Jackson and Andrews or just Jackson. I don't know if I can keep investing money in Marquise Brown. If I do, it's going to be because I just didn't like the other receiving options in that price range anyway, or because I built it backwards and he fit. But Lamar naked, I don't know. I don't see too much else. Next,
Baltimore D.
Well, Baltimore D, I don't mind, especially if Colt McCoy's in there. Yes, I can get behind that. What do we have here? Bears and Jags. We've got a 47 total.
Yep.
All day. And the Bengals are currently 7.5-point favorites. Like anything on the Chicago side?
It's only 2020 when you could say that the safest running back on the board.
Don't do it.
Is David Montgomery.
Oh, he did it. He fucking did it. It's true though. I know.
Like, got a good matchup again. They're feeding him again. Like, still under 8K. Like, there's really nobody else. Scored over 20 points 4 games in a row. Like, time to buy in. Sorry, there's nobody else. It's him or Taylor, I think. Chubb's not going to really go to. And C-Mac's too much. So, Dave Montgomery's going to be highly owned again. They have something against Allen Robinson. That's crime what they did to him in the second half last week. too expensive at 7,500 now. Done. Tight end Cole Kmet, one of the other players that played 100% of the snaps. Somehow he only got like 2.7 last week, which just pissed me off. Like, because I had him in my, thought he was going to do more, at least 1 or 2x. He did shit. 12 yards, 2 catches. The Bears D also 4,700 against Jags.
The fucking Bears have scored 30 points or more in 3 straight games. What the fuck is going on? Listen, I think the Bears win this game, obviously. Not a hot take. But I hope and pray Jacksonville somehow does. This is the last chance for my New York Jets to get that number 1 pick. This is the last chance. We need one more win from Jacksonville. And if there was a team for Jacksonville to do it, it's either them or the Colts. And I think the Bears are the more likely candidate, especially being that Jacksonville is home. Montgomery does look. I think Montgomery can end up being pretty popular, right? Because we don't have a lot of running backs to spend on. We have some cheap receivers, and he's been smashing, just fucking smashing. And it's a good matchup, so I could see it. Maybe Allen Robinson comes a little bit lower on. We can get some leverage that way. Maybe Mitch Trubisky in general. If Jacksonville does kind of surprise us and kind of pop out ahead a little bit, which I know is hard to imagine because I've got the Bears defense, but there is a world where just things just don't go right for the Bears and Jacksonville's defense is able to get ahead or something. But Cole Kmet continues to be cheap, playing every down. Allen Robinson, I think, could be an interesting leverage play off of Montgomery. But yeah, Montgomery's looking like the optimal player to take in the situation, and he's been on a fucking hot streak, man. Fucking hot streak. What about the Jacksonville side?
The Jacksonville side, nothing. Like, it's really, they have nothing to play for. They want to lose.
Yeah.
What? I mean, really,
it's true.
Honestly, nothing.
Nothing. I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. Is there anything I can think of? No. I don't got it. I would love for it to happen somehow, but I don't see a path. I just don't see it.
I mean, maybe James Robinson if he's healthy, but he's hurt.
He's the only way. But even him, like the Bears defense, like say what you will, people could say it's overrated, and at times it is. But overall, they've got good numbers, and you know what? Teams have not always performed well against them. Some of them have, right? We saw the Vikings put up points, and you know the Packers and what you would consider good offenses. But they have done well against bad teams. And Jacksonville is a bad team. Okay, moving right along. We've got, I think we're into the 4 o'clock games, right? Yes, we are. Into the later games, Joe. We've got the Broncos. We've got your Chargers. We have a 48.5 total. Chargers with a 3.5 point favorites. What do you like from the Broncos?
I mean, you mentioned it pre-show how you like Melvin Gordon as a revenge game and stuff, but like these are 2 teams that don't have anything to play for. So it's really tough to really know like how long they're going to play, what they're going to go for. You know, on the Denver side, there's really nobody that you can like rely on. Noah Fant, I think, would probably be the best option at 6,200. He'd be the only guy I'd really be looking at as somebody that you can depend on from the Denver side. I mean, Melvin Gordon, he scored 2 touchdowns last week, but like that was it. Like, I mean, he didn't really do much anything else. So it just, I think he's the main man there. So volume wise, I think he'll do it, and people might just go there because it's like the revenge narrative, but I don't see like a huge ceiling game.
I'm doing it, Joe, but I'm only doing it for the revenge narrative. Obviously, he had the holdout with the Chargers. There's nothing else. What do we have to? What do we have in a game like this where neither team is playing for anything? We look for any little edge we can get, and I think there's an emotional edge with Gordon. Well, obviously, Gordon is getting fed more and more each week. It seems like he's just taking over so much of the playing time, and maybe that does change. But I think Gordon wants this one. I think he would love to stick it to the Chargers, a team that didn't think he was worth the money, and I'm not arguing. They have Austin Eckler. I think I would take Austin Eckler over him all day, every day. But maybe Gordon has a little bit something to prove. More importantly, the Chargers defense has not been good. So I do have interest in Gordon, and like you said, Noah Fant would be the next guy, definitely. The Chargers have struggled against tight ends, 8th most fantasy points allowed to boys and tight ends. What about the Chargers side?
The Chargers side, Justin Herbert, I think he's at home. The Denver secondary is just terrible. We saw what Josh Allen did to them last week. Now they're coming into LA where the Chargers they've won 2 in a row. They're feeling good. I like Herbert. Eckler, I think, is fine. This might be the week where he does something because last week he kind of busted. He's 7K. He went down a little bit. You just don't know how much of a workload they're going to give him. But maybe last week was just a slighter workload because it was a Thursday game. So they wanted to get his rep. They want to limit his reps and stuff like that. So Eckler. And then the big question is if Keenan Allen is playing this week. If he's not, maybe it's Tyron Johnson again at 5,600. I'm pretty sure if Keenan Allen's out, then I think he becomes like a chalk play at his price for what we've seen the last few weeks. You know, what Herbert does, just pepper him. So that's it. Hunter Henry, too, I think isn't bad also. And then I wouldn't mind the Chargers defense just because I know Drew Lock is turnover prone, but don't be thinking it's going to be some huge output by the Chargers defense.
I really like the Chargers offense, man. I really do this week. I think they're going to be low owned. Herbert is a little expensive at 7.4, but Keenan Allen is to me some of the biggest news I'm waiting for. Maybe the biggest. Number one, because like you said, if he's out, and same thing with Mike Williams, they're both banged up. If Keenan is out though, I do think you just said his name, Tyron Johnson. I do think he becomes a phenomenal play. And I think he will be popular. But the reason that we like the situation is because Denver's secondary. We saw what Josh Allen did in Denver. Josh Allen's very good. I'm not trying to discredit him, but we knew going into that game that Denver's secondary is completely fucked up right now. They're missing their number 1 cornerback with suspension. Their number 2 cornerback went to the IR, and the number 3 cornerback has been out. Their secondary is it's in trouble right now. So I think that Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen are phenomenal looking plays if we get them. Don't mind Mike Williams at 4,500. If they're out, it just gets a little bit cheaper for me. But right now, I am looking at the Chargers offense as a team I think I'm going to want to get some exposure to for sure. Next up, Joe, we've got the Eagles, Cowboys. Oh, real quick, have you heard anything? Like, have you been hearing anything at Charger camp about Keenan Allen? I know it's too early. It's probably too early, right?
I mean, he was limited today at practice. So,
yeah. Because he was basically a decoy in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All right. We'll see. Eagles, Cowboys, 49.5 total. Eagles 2-point favorites on the road. What are you doing with Jalen Hurts? He's a little bit more expensive this week.
You know, with the rushing upside that he brings you, I mean, he's in that conversation that he's pretty safe floor. And at 8,200, if he's going to get you, 60 yards rushing, that's another touchdown pass. Can't expect him to throw for over 300 yards because that means that Dallas is going to have to put up points too. I just don't think it's going to be that kind of a game. So I prefer I wouldn't mind him in cash games. I don't mind him like that, but I think you'll be chasing if you think that he's going to win the slate for you and such again. But I don't mind it. I like Miles Sanders a lot too. Leighton Vander Esch is out, and they can't stop the run when Leighton Vander Esch is out. So I feel like they'll be do a lot of read options like they do with Hurts and with Sanders. I mean, and Sanders had a good week last week, and I feel like his ownership is going to be down because he didn't get in the end zone, but he got 17 carries. Got to get a little bit more action in the passing game, but coming off of a week before where he had almost 30 points. So I feel like he's a little bit under the radar, but yet a good play in a week where there's not very many running backs in good situations. Miles Sanders is one of them, though. And then the receivers, it's kind of like, I feel like Greg Ward is like the guy that he's kind of going at and he has some sort of chemistry with. And then Goddard is he leads the team in targets, but he needs to get a touchdown.
So yeah, I think the stack with Hurts is on the table. Last week I was thinking about playing him naked. This week I would stack. I think that Rager had 8 targets and he's only 4,600 on DraftKings. Ward is the one that ended up getting in the end zone. He's only 4K. So either one of those guys, both of those guys is fine. You have the tight ends, Goddard and Ertz, who both got some action. I'm okay with that. But I agree with you in that if Hurts' ownership gets driven up, which I think it could, and for good reason, right? The rushing floor he's like another Kyler Murray type that's just out there running and making plays. But if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, Miles Sanders is a phenomenal leverage play because very few people are going to play Hurts with Sanders. Last week, that was the route I went. In my Kyler Murray teams, I went with Miles Sanders, and he didn't quite get there, didn't get in the end zone. It could be different this week. You'd mentioned that Dallas is missing Van Der Esch again. Dallas has given up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Now, they have given up the 2nd to receivers, 7th to quarterbacks. But if Philly does play from ahead in this game, and I kind of think they will, because I do respect Philly's defense, I think, or at least to a degree, we'll talk about that in a second. I think that Sanders could end up having a big game, even if not. Even if this game is a shootout, we can see it. We do see Sanders getting those touches again. So the way that Hurts doesn't score is that Sanders does. So I could definitely buy into that, Joe. What about the Dallas side?
Dallas side, obviously you don't want Dalton. Tony Pollard, if Zeke's out, Tony Pollard probably will be a very chalky play again, just because starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys in the late game, a Troy Aikman special with Joe Buck doing Philly Dallas. Everybody just want to go there. Pollard will be very chalky play. Their defense is pretty good though, so it's like I still think he's a good play, and I'd probably play him too, but I don't think he's going to have a play like he did last week. Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are in play. Michael Gallup right now is out with a hip pointer, it looks like. So I don't really want to go there. So that kind of opens things up for Cooper and Lamb, which if Slay is there, then whatever. I feel like he'll do all right, but he was out last week. Dalton Schultz is, again, just wondering if he'll fall down in the end zone. That could work, but that's about it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like I said, I don't have a ton of confidence in the Cowboys' offense. Darius Slay will have a lot to do with that. If Slay is out, I'll have to kind of buy in because I do think that with the Eagles' defensive line is decent, but I do think that without Slay, their secondary is just it takes a big blow. Now, on the flip side, the Dallas Cowboy offensive line has not been good for Dalton. So as long as they can keep pressure on Dalton, they should be fine. But there's no guarantee of any of that. So CeeDee Lamb is definitely interesting anyway. If Slay plays, if Slay is out, then I don't see a reason not to go up to Cooper, who's only $400 more expensive. So especially with Gallup out, so I'm good with all that. We could see Wilson, Cedric Wilson, get some more action in Gallup's role, right? That's a guy that they kind of like to get some time out there. We don't know for sure, but can acknowledge him at min price. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, I'm more interested in the Eagles' offense. I think at this point. And even if Pollard were in, now that he's more expensive, I don't think I'd be all that crazy about him at this point. The only benefit is he's getting a ton of snaps, which is a big deal. I shouldn't downplay that. Mm-hmm. Last game, we have the Rams Seahawks. The precious Rams, 47.5 is the total. The Seahawks are currently 1.5 point favorites at home because the Rams couldn't beat the Jets. Joe, talk to me about the Rams.
Yeah, this is like a game where the Rams come in and win. You know what I mean? Like after getting embarrassed, they're going to come into Seattle and they're going to have to throw. They don't have Cam Akers. I don't know how much you can trust Jared Goff, but he seems to, like, in this kind of situation, when he's up against a tougher team, he produces better. But when he's not, like, it just seems like he kind of wilters. So I don't mind Goff as a contrarian play. I really don't. I think he's a good GPP play just because this Seattle secondary can be beat if you give him time. Obviously, Woods and Kupp are in good matchups, so just go to them. Tight end, I'm not really worried about. And then this Rams defense was embarrassed last week. I don't mind it as a GPP. I don't mind them at all.
We know that Cam Akers is out, I still think that between Henderson and Malcolm Brown, it's not totally clear. I think Henderson maybe edges it out a little bit. There's the word, Joe. There it is. There it is.
Booyah!
So I think that's a possibility, but I'm more interested in the pass game. Jared Goff. First of all, he's 5'9", so the price has come down. Second of all, Jared Goff, for some reason, this year, and I said it when I was talking about him last week, why I wasn't really into him against the Jets, was his home and road splits. Similar to Kirk Cousins, how Cousins always seems to do well at home. It's the opposite with Goff. All of his bigger games this year have been on the road. He just doesn't seem to do well at home. And I think this is a situation, it's a perfect setup. Going against Seattle, which is a really bad defense, but a team that's like got good enough talent to where they could keep up even against a good defense like the Rams. So I'm really into this game, and I like Goff a ton. I really do. I hope people veer away from this offense. I doubt they will too much because it's one of the higher total games on the slate, but I really do like this game. I think a lot of people will go to that Atlanta Chiefs game, and I think it's a phenomenal one, but it's very expensive. This one is much more affordable, and I think you could build some better teams around these players. But I really like Goff, love Woods, love Cup. Let's go. Let's do dirties. What about the Seattle side?
Yeah, the Seattle side, this is basically for the division in so many ways. So Russell Wilson his price is under 8K, which is really weird for the way that he played in the beginning of the year. But he's only had 20 points twice in like the last 6 weeks. So he's just not doing it. He seems to be like deteriorating as the season goes on. And I don't know. I feel like they're in a situation where the offense is going to stutter a little bit. I think DK Metcalf for under 8K is a great GPP play, but he hasn't done much in a month or so where he justifies his price. He needs to go off like he did, but he has a tough matchup against Jalen Ramsey. So, obviously DK can bust free, but I feel like they're going to have a hard time moving the ball. Tyler Lockett's going to have to come through. If you think that they're going to do it, I think maybe then Tyler Lockett becomes a play because I just don't see how they're going to move the ball right now if DK can't get open. So I think this is going to be what's the over-under in this game?
47.5.
That's a little bit lower. I thought it was going to be like 50 or not. 47 is about right, but I don't know. I feel like this game is almost a trap in so many ways. I like the Rams side better, but I just don't. I see DK being okay, but they just don't sometimes they just don't throw to him for a while, so they just won't go to him at all. So it's kind of confusing at times.
I like Lockett in this one. His prices come down. Last time these guys played, Lockett didn't have a great game, but he did have 9 targets while Metcalf only had a few. You're right. I think they will kind of look away from Jalen Ramsey at times. Metcalf is cheap enough to where I'd be willing to take that chance because I do think he's somewhat to a degree matchup proof as long as Russ is willing to throw him the ball, which maybe he will. But either way, Tyler Lockett is the path of less resistance for this team, and I can see him getting a whole lot of targets. Maybe the fact that they're at home, they play a little bit better. Russell Wilson is on a little bit more. But I think Seattle shows up. This is a very fucking important game for both teams. So I definitely think Seattle shows up. I think this game is a really good game. But I do think the Rams end up winning. And so for me, one of my favorite stacks I can tell you right now is going to be Goff, Woods, Cup, bringing it back with Tyler Lockett. Punting where I need to punt to make that work, and it's not that bad. They're all basically mid-tier plays, and doing dirties and dropping sevens. That's just what I see. So I do like it. That's gonna do it for the game by game breakdown. If you haven't hit the like button, please hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to us on Podbean, iTunes, whatever it is you're listening or watching this on. Notifications bell on so you're notified whenever we go live. We're covering NBA. We have a lot of good. Free content up on our platforms. And of course, check us out at wisestate.com if you're looking to take your game to a next level. We are a premium DFS content provider. More importantly, we're a DFS community designed to help make you a better DFS player. Joe, anything in closing before we get up out of here?
If you guys don't join us, obviously we'll be doing the show Friday night after Christmas. So everybody that's watching, have a very happy and safe Christmas. We love you guys. We appreciate you so much for joining in week and week out. To answer the one question in the chat about Andy Dalton, why don't I want to go there? His ceiling hasn't even been 20 points. He hasn't even hit that like once this year on FanDuel. So I just don't see him going there, even with a bad Philly secondary, him being that much high. Maybe a piece here and there, but I'd rather just go with Hurts and then maybe pick one of their receivers.
Boom. For Patio Joe, for myself, the entire White Take Nation, as always, good luck.
Peace.
Yeah.